The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Fed15 podcast presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, we'll discuss the latest news and info that feds need to know in 15 minutes or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or whether you're just starting out in your career, Fed15 has got you covered. So grab your coffee, kick back, and we'll tell you what you need to know but might have missed in the federal space over the week. We're your hosts, Dan Sipe and Katelyn Murray. Dan, how's it going?
Katelyn.
Yeah.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. This episode, of course, is airing right after Mother's Day. So we want to take a moment to wish all of the moms who are listening a happy Mother's Day.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Moms, mother figures, you name it. We're wishing you a slightly belated great day, and you don't get enough credit.
For sure. Yeah. Moms, stepmoms, bonus moms, motherly, those with maternal instincts.
Yep.
You can definitely mother without being a mom. I learned that early. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and also, if it's news to you that it's 2 days past Mother's Day, maybe call your mom.
Yeah.
That's probably a good. Actually, you know what? That's probably not a phone call situation. That's probably a show up with flowers situation.
Yes. I would agree. Flowers, candy, take mom to dinner.
Yeah. So I went to a very interesting, I was actually really excited to talk to you about this. It was just last night. I went to a really interesting talk by a man named Greg Robinson. Do you know Greg Robinson?
Can't say as I do.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. So Greg Robinson was the director of the James Webb Telescope project. Yes.
Okay.
So fun fact, and I did not know this prior to learning about this event, he is actually a Danville, Virginia area native.
Did not know that.
Yes. Born and raised. We went to the same elementary school. And we also both got master's degrees in business from the same institution, from Averett University, which is based here in Danville. And he was working for NASA and was tapped. They were already working on the Webb project. He was working on something else. His boss pulled him in and basically said, we need to change out the director of this project. It was way behind schedule. It was way over budget. And we're talking over budget in the billions with a B. And so they called Greg and said they were going to switch out the program director. So he started recommending people. And about the third or fourth person in, his boss leveled with him and said, yeah, I'm thinking you. And it took a couple months and some conversations with his mentors and also, of course, with his wife, who was also there at the talk. And then he signed on. And so he led a talk here on kind of an overview. It was really interesting. It was an overview of the James Webb Telescope, how it works, how it sort of adds to the research, what the whole point of, having it is, and then also what the process was like to kind of take the helm with a project that was behind schedule like that and deliver.
Sure.
And he said something that I thought you would find really interesting. I certainly found it interesting. In that project, there were 350 single point failures. Meaning that, so when NASA normally does, a project, they try to minimize single point failures. Single point failures are pieces where if this one thing doesn't fire, or if this one knob doesn't turn, or if this one thing doesn't automatically deploy, the whole mission is a failure.
Wow.
It just won't move forward. And so obviously they try to keep those at a minimum by having backup systems. And you can kind of imagine it like dominoes. So if one domino doesn't fall into the other one, exactly right and it breaks the chain, they try to have as many kind of backup systems as possible to keep, the mission viable, because there's a lot of money and time and expertise invested in these things. But that project, there weren't that many workarounds. So there were 350 single point failures, and yet everything came off perfectly, came off phenomenally. And it was really interesting. He showed some footage of launching it and all that. And it was just a really cool moment of inspiration of what humankind is capable of. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, I'm a NASA geek. So, just everything around space exploration. And as you correctly identify, there's so many things.
Yeah.
And then further when you get to shooting people up there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. All the variables, if you want to read a great book, I actually touched on it in one of the very first podcasts. It's called Rocket Men. And it talks about the mission before we landed on the moon, to fire out, orbit the moon, come back. We had never tested anything like that, doing that, when we just went ahead and did it. And so, hats off. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Thank you for giving us this cool thing that lets us see the origin of the universe.
Yeah.
That's when I always have to wrap my head around. It's so we can look all the way back to the Big Bang with this, right?
Yeah, it was very, and at the risk of I thought he was a really interesting person, and, whatever your belief system is, as listeners, obviously we talk to a wide range of folks and are respectful of a wide range of folks. But I thought it was particularly interesting that he is a man of faith, and he doesn't, even knowing all of the things that he knows about science and being working in the field of astrophysics, he doesn't necessarily see things that typically we would understand to be competing pieces of information as conflicting. And it's really cool to see somebody who is so smart and who knows so much and who has achieved something massive.
Absolutely.
Obviously with the help of hundreds of thousands of people. But to see somebody who is so smart say, well, I don't have it all worked out, but
Yeah. No,
so I think
awesome.
That was really cool. So he does speak at, it's mostly at schools. But this was just sort of a community event that was put on by the Science Center. A friend of mine, a colleague who kind of works there and helps them with their programming, had invited me. But there are lots of speaking engagements. He actually lives in Northern Virginia. So there's lots of opportunities to see him speak. I highly recommend it if you come across an event that he's going to be speaking at.
And I highly recommend he visit our website.
Yeah, I know. I was like, he had won some sort of award. Yeah, he had won some sort of award for federal government employees, and I was in the audience, woo, yay! So yeah, always down to support feds when they're coming through town. So
absolutely. Well, we've got some cool non-space stuff.
Yes, I was going to say, speaking of supporting feds, we've got some interesting topics today. We're going to talk about. Dan's going to talk in a little bit about your federal financial plan needs. But before we get into that, we wanted to revisit the topic of FEGLI. So we had mentioned, I believe it was in last week's episode, we had touched on FEGLI. We did put out an interesting article this week on the blog covering kind of changing your coverage, open seasons, physicals associated with FEGLI, and of course, qualifying life events. Now, qualified life events in particular, that's a question that comes up a lot in our financial planning meetings with feds are, what qualifies as a qualifying life event. So we're going to get into that. So once you are employed by the federal government, at the point that you are hired, feds are automatically enrolled in basic FEGLI coverage, and they're given an option to decline or add options A, B, and C coverage. So additional enrollment opportunities from that point forward come up when you transition to positions that are eligible for FEGLI, so maybe you were in a position that wasn't eligible previously, and now, you're transitioning to a role that is. If you leave federal service and you're gone for over 180 days, or if you are designated as essential for emergency operations, then you get an opportunity to kind of reevaluate your FEGLI coverage choices. Now, altering your FEGLI coverage, let us be clear, is pretty complex. Canceling it is easy, right? That's a simple process. But if you're adding coverage, you've got to kind of take one of three paths, right? One is FEGLI open season, right? That's probably the most common one. Well, actually, it's probably the least common one because they do those infrequently, right, Dan?
Correct.
Those are fairly rare. It's not like, the words open season, I think.
Typically, you'll see it when there's a change to the program.
Yeah, the words open season are a little bit misleading because I think people hear open season, myself included, and they think health insurance, FEHB, right?
Does not happen every year.
FEGLI open season, totally different situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
So FEGLI open season is the least common. There's also, if you go through a qualifying life event, and we'll talk about what those are in a second. And then there's also a physician's approval. And that one is fairly rare as well and fairly individualized. Now, the last FEGLI open season, you may be curious, happened in September of 2016. And before that, it happened in 2004. So to give you an idea of kind of the cadence of how infrequently those open seasons occur, it's quite a bit of time in between there. Qualifying life events, let's kind of go through, because I think there's some confusion around this, around what exactly qualifies. So obviously getting married changes your financial situation, changes the need for life insurance, makes sense. Getting unmarried, getting divorced, changes the situation, changes the life insurance kind of overall picture. The death of a spouse is also a qualifying life event. The birth or adoption of a child is also a qualifying life event. Now, these events allow you to add coverage outside of an open season and without a medical exam, but you've got to do it within 60 days. So you can't get married at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year be wanting to change your FEGLI because you've already missed the window. Okay.
Gotcha.
And that's particularly important, I think, for our folks who are dealing with the birth of a child or the adoption of a new child into the family. It's pretty hectic. There's a lot going on. Got to stay mindful that you've got 2 months to get that life insurance updated. And that's pretty important for your family. I want to call out, and this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions. Retirement is not considered a qualifying life event. I will say it again. Retirement is not considered a qualifying life event. And it's often during pre-retirement planning that you should review your FEGLI options. So if you are listening to this podcast episode and you are thinking, I don't even know what my FEGLI options are, or I don't even know what coverage I'm signed in for or signed up for and what I'm not, I definitely would recommend signing up for one of our webinars on FEGLI. We hold them periodically throughout the year.
Yep.
You can also, if you're looking for a little bit more individualized experience, you can reach out to us at askstws@stwserve.com. And we'd be happy to do, benefits analysis and kind of give you as part of that, the rundown on your current FEGLI coverage. I think that's really important if you're sort of in the dark right now, because we never know when those open seasons are coming up. And if you need to make a change in an open season, you need to kind of have that in the back of your mind.
Gotcha.
So that's the skinny on changing your FEGLI coverage.
Great stuff. Great stuff. And second thing we're on the third in Jen Meyer's outstanding series, 5 things you must have in federal financial plan. Well, this rounds out the final 3, and I'm going to hit these at high level because you need to read Jen's article. Okay. You need to do that. It's worth it.
Read the whole series.
Yes. And it's prioritizing pension practices, total TSP plan, and her bonus boost. Here's the thing, folks. If you've listened to me, you know this. Yes, you can retire at 57, but understand you're discounting your pension to do it. because I believe, and I want this to become the standard for FERS employees, that the standard is to retire at 62 with at least 20 years so that you get the 1.1% multiplier. Okay. Everything below that, it's not that you get 10% more. Everything else you're taking 10% less. And then when you factor into that, if you go out before 62, you're not going to have a COLA on your pension until 62. Oh, wait, Dan, don't forget the first supplement. I'm not forgetting the first supplement. As a matter of fact, Ed Zerndorfer did a great article. You can find it on our website where it says that doesn't compensate you well enough for giving up the 10%, but there's no COLA on that. So don't miss the things that could really trip up your retirement within that. So make it a priority to know and understand. And if you are gunning for going out at 57, that starts at your first day of service, because you need to be maximizing TSP from day one to make sure that you have some really big retirement assets there to help offset that, which leads me to number 2, which is total TSP play. Okay, max early, max often. Have a reasonable asset allocation. Don't try and joystick it. Go flipping around from fund to fund based on what just happened. Don't forget that you have Roth in there. Oh, wait a minute, Dan, I make too much money. No, wrong. There is no income restriction on being in Roth. And here's the one thing that it's a drum that we beat over and over and over again. If you're a FERS employee, your FERS pension can kind of keep up with inflation. Your Social Security can kind of keep up with inflation. TSP is the one place where you can get ahead. You can manage it properly, so over time it grows faster than the rate of inflation. So don't forget those things. And the last one, again, I'm going through this at warp speed here, doff of the cap again to NASA.
Speaking my language.
Is her bonus boost, which is the healthcare savings account. And Katelyn, I know you've done some great articles about how maybe not the best thing to inherit, but think about this, folks. This is something that you can put away money on a pre-tax basis. And if you use it for qualified medical expenses, you can take it out with no tax. So get the deduction and then take it out later, tax-free. And, oh, Dan, it can only be used for medical expenses. Well, guess what, folks? I'm 67 years old. I'm not retired, but I still have more medical expenses than I did 10 years ago.
For sure.
Okay. So to be in a position to use accumulated tax-free money, and this is for me the mind blown part of it. So if a 32-year-old Fed just put the 2024 maximum, didn't adjust it for inflation, okay, no catch-ups, anything, of $8,300. If a 32-year-old Fed just did that regularly until 62, invested it, because that's the other thing. People don't know they can invest their health savings account balances. You can let it build up. You don't have to use it for your glasses every year. And if you do that, if you do just $8,300 a year, 32-year-old Fed does it till age 62 and just got an average rate of return of 8%. Katelyn, would you like to guess how much money that is?
Hang on real quick. Let me run a time value of money calculation on my
No fair. That's not a guess. Okay, this is like X-Men. No fair using powers in basketball.
How many years do we have? We started 30. At 32?
8%, 8,300.
8%, 8,300. And how many years are we invested?
30.
30. I don't know. Let's go for an even $500,000.
Excellent guess. Over 900,000.
Yeah.
Almost $1 million.
I figured we were lowballing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great boost. Thank you, Jen. Okay. Be sure to read her article. I had kind of buzzed through that one, but whenever we do these, folks, please go back to the article, because this is designed to give you high level stuff on what you might have missed already. And we've got it there, easy to find. Go ahead and grab it. And with that, I think that wraps up what we were supposed to cover. I think this is one of our ish episodes.
It is. For sure. But that's all right. You know that we will be back next week with a 15-ish minute episode helping you make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed. Be sure to not miss that episode by subscribing on our YouTube channel or on Spotify so that you never, ever miss out on the information that you need to know. And please do share it with your friends and colleagues. If you've got a second, grab the YouTube link, just shoot it off to somebody. You never know how it could help them because maybe you don't have an issue with FEGLI, but maybe somebody else does, and they need to hear that. And that's what we're here to do.
And for more information on the topics covered in today's show and more, check out the blog at blog.stwserve.com. And be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, The Weekly Serving. You'll get all our best stuff shipped right to your inbox each and every week. You don't have to go looking for it.
And for those who want to dive even deeper into learning about your federal benefits and financial planning for Feds, we encourage you and Greg Robinson to join us for one of our complimentary webinars. Coming up, we have a TSP planning webinar on May 17th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Highly, highly recommend that one if you've never joined us before. Like Dan said earlier, the TSP is the one place where you've got a shot at outpacing inflation. It's really important to make up that gap. Yep. We also have an FEHB webinar coming up. It's our special 4-hour webinar series on FEHB. It will be hosted by the lovely Dan Sipe, and that'll be on May 22nd from 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Highly recommend joining that one as well. Of course, if you prefer a one-on-one approach, you don't want to go the webinar route, feel free to reach out to our team directly for a financial planning consultation at askstwserve@stwserve.com. We'd be happy to help you.
100%. Well, folks, thank you once again for listening to the Fed15. I'm Dan Sipe.
And I'm Katelyn Murray.
And we will see you next week.
See you there.